Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, viewers. The Quran and the Puzzle of Life. And this is episode number 2. We are trying to talk about this thesis, and Shariq Butt is helping me in looking at the different aspects of this claim that I'm making. And he challenged me in the first episode, and I'm thankful to him. And let's see what challenges he throws at me now. Yes, Shariq.
Thank you for having me again. And hopefully I have a few challenges, but hopefully we can start to put the puzzle together.
That'll be great.
But before we do that, why should we put the puzzle together? You're saying that you're presenting life as a puzzle. If somebody put a box with a puzzle in it in front of you, couldn't you easily say, well, I don't want to do this puzzle, and maybe go solve another puzzle or do something else entirely? What do you think about that?
This could happen, and it does happen. And sometimes when it happens, the person who is ignoring the puzzle probably cannot be blamed. But you know what, Shariq? A normal, reasonable person, human being, cannot ignore this puzzle for all throughout his life. You know, we are at times supremely successful, happy, excited, deeply involved in different aspects of life, projects, difficulties. So we can be forgiven for not taking the puzzle seriously. But for how long? I mean, in different phases of one's life, in most cases, there comes a point in time when you're left to ask this question: why is it happening? Who is doing it? What's the purpose? And if there are people around you who are promising that, you know what, we have answers to these questions, why are you not interested? If the person says, well, I'm not interested, I think here is a problem. Here is something that is problematic. I made a claim in the first episode that God Almighty has all the great attributes. He is knowledgeable, supremely, completely. He's fair, he's kind and sympathetic. He has promised that on the day of judgment, he is not going to hold anyone accountable for more than his capacity. He is not going to treat anyone unfairly by the slightest of margins. So, people can avoid this question for a little while, but it's very difficult to imagine that anybody who is reasonable would be able to avoid it completely for all throughout his life.
Okay. So if we were to look at the puzzle of life, and so you're saying the Quran is the way to solve it, I think a lot of people in our modern day would say that science is the force in our world that is solving the puzzle and making discoveries and such. So what do you think? How do you think science fits in? And what would you answer back to someone who told you, no, science is...
Yeah, that's a very important question. It cannot be avoided in this modern world of science and technology. I think what people should realize who are asking this question, that science is answering the question, how? How is it happening? How is this universe, this existence functioning the way it's functioning? And how can we employ whatever resources we have around us to enable us to live more comfortably, to make progress? So the puzzle that I'm talking about is not the one which science solves. The puzzle that I'm talking about is the question about why have we been created? Now, science would not answer that question. Who created us? Science doesn't answer it. Some people think that most scientists are atheists because that's what they have discovered. No, I think the truth of the matter is that they've chosen not to delve into this subject.
I think a lot of them would say that it's the individual themselves can determine
Absolutely.
what the purpose of their life
It's
will
not,
be.
it's not our domain to make that kind of a statement or make claims. So yes, science has answered many questions about the puzzle of life, but that's a different puzzle. That's a puzzle that has got to do with the question, how is it all this happening? And indeed,
Our material world,
yeah,
basically.
I mean, there was a time when we had a very different explanation to how the rain falls, for instance.
Right.
How earthquakes take
Science
place.
is
And,
evolving over time.
Science has evolved
as we
and
make
come up with
Yep.
much more convincing answers now. But the questions that I've mentioned earlier, they're still there, and science has got nothing to do with them.
So wouldn't you say philosophy does have something to do with them?
Absolutely. Now, philosophy and religion have got a lot in common.
Of course. So how would you say that fits in? Do you need philosophy if you have the Quran?
I think you do. The only difference between philosophy and the Quran or a sacred text is that philosophers would use their intellect, would go deep into these questions intellectually, debate, find answers, look at what others have got to say. The sacred religious text says, this is me, God, talking to you, and I'm telling you these are the answers. Now, with regard to philosophers, you will have to figure out, if you are interested in philosophy, are they making sense? In the case of religion, I think the first question that everybody must ask, but unfortunately most people who are born into a religious tradition don't ask, why should I accept this claim that it's God speaking to me? It's a fundamental question. But that's the vital difference between religion and philosophy.
So I definitely want to get into how you use the Quran. How do you apply it to solve the puzzle exactly? But first, let me just ask you this. Do you think then that everyone living in Muslim countries has solved the puzzle to a higher extent? Or just Muslim populations in general? And don't you think we would, do we see that evidence playing out in real life?
No and yes. Let me come to the yes part of it first. Obviously, because the Quran is God's word and most Muslims read it, at least to some extent. So what they are doing is, in a way, the right direction. They're moving in the right direction and living a life in a way that is solving the problem of life. And they do it because that's how they have been brought up. They have been trained. But they're not doing it properly because they're just reading a text which they have been informed is from God. And as I said earlier, they don't even ask this question, what would prove to me? What would make me feel satisfied, comfortable that it's from God? That question is probably not encouraged to be asked. So on the one hand, it's a dilemma. It's on the one hand, religious people, Muslims, they are doing the right thing, looking at what they are doing from the point of view of the puzzle. But on the other hand, they're not doing it quite as properly as one would expect them to do, given that they've got the text that answers the question. But Shariq, that again, I think is helping in solving the puzzle. Because had Muslims been solving all of them or most of them the puzzle properly, then it would have created a new problem. Why is it that they have an advantage over others?
Well, I think that would just push more people to become Muslim in that case, which, I mean, you could argue is happening right now as we sit here.
It's happening, Shariq, but the percentage still is very low.
Yeah.
And, if you empathize with religious non-Muslims, you would know that it's not an easy task to convert. I mean, within Muslims, we know that there are many religious groups and sects, and people belonging to one religious background sect, they are really hesitant.
Well, that's interesting. Wouldn't you say that, let's say you're speaking to a Christian and he has a family, a career, he's happy, he feels connected to his religion. Would you say that he has already solved the puzzle of life?
I would think that if the person is making that statement, I have no right to dispute that. But if I would be friendly enough with him, will have the luxury of talking to the person a bit
Let's say
more.
he asked you to be brutally honest with him.
Yeah, I would say that I'll raise some of those questions which I think are making his text less likely to solve the puzzle.
But you're saying it's close.
It is close, most certainly. Why? Because the Quran tells us that they too have God's book, and therefore most of the answers are actually solving the puzzle. And that would lead me to also make another statement which many Muslims would not like. Many Christians, I'm just talking about Christians, other people belonging to other religious groups have similar remarks from my side, regarding them. Many Christians could be doing better than Muslims, despite the fact that the Muslims have an advantage of having God's last work completely preserved with them. But Christians may be solving the puzzle better. And from my perspective, this makes more sense, because had that not been the case, then there would have been this very serious claim, complaint. Why is it that some people who are born accidentally to a certain religion have this advantage, while others who were by God's design given to be born and brought up in another religious tradition, they have a disadvantage? So a part of the solution to this puzzle is that God is absolutely fair and it's a level playing ground. Even though people are diverse in their backgrounds, they all have been given this opportunity to perform well. And at the end of the day, each person is going to be held accountable, answerable on the basis of his, her capacity, which is their level of intelligence, etc., and their environment.
So I am curious. A lot of people would say that material wealth is an important part of this life. I wouldn't necessarily say it's the most important thing, but in this day and age, it is considered one of the most important, if not the most important. How do you think that fits into the puzzle of life?
It does very much so. The thing is that we will say that people who've got wealth more than others, far more than what seems to be justifiable. If you look at the solution to the puzzle offered by the Quran, it's no measure of success, not at all. This life is very temporary. A wealthy person is being tested for his inclination to be grateful, thankful to the Almighty for the blessings that he's enjoying. A person who is not quite as gifted, fortunate, is being tested for being patient and being thankful for whatever blessings that he is having, enjoying. At the end of this life, all is going to come to a level. They'll all be equal. And when the eternal life after this life is going to begin, people who will look at the hindsight, at this life, they would say, well, it hardly matters. It hardly mattered whether we were rich or poor. The fact is that it was all a trial. And the more important thing was as to how well did we perform. So I think richness or otherwise, this problem, this puzzle is solved only by the message of God and nothing else.
So I'm curious, what would you say about that same statement flipped? If someone were to say to you that, oh, well, it turned out everything, the God, the creator, everything you were talking, the afterlife is not real. So I wasted my whole life doing this stuff instead of accruing material wealth and enjoying my life. And now I'm on my deathbed and my life has been wasted. So how do you know for sure? Like, how can you be sure that this is, am I phrasing the question?
Yeah, yeah,
I can,
yeah. You know, when you say that you are certain about a claim which is kind of philosophical in nature, there are no material evidences of it, then you're talking about an area of understanding where your confidence grows gradually. And it all depends on how sincere you are. And that, I think, is again another feature of the solution of the Quran to the puzzle that makes it more convincing. You, to begin with, have a feeling that it's making sense. You move ahead and you learn more, and you make the kind of sacrifices which the message is demanding from you. And you say that the person may ultimately find that he lost a very good opportunity of doing well in life. He will not be asked to do away with everything that he has in life. He'll be allowed to enjoy his life within limits of decency, morality. But on the other hand, he'll have this exceptionally good feeling deep down that I know what the purpose of life is, and I know the direction that I'm moving in.
Contentness.
Yeah, contentness. So if somebody at the end of his journey feels utterly frustrated that I wasted my life, well,
I've never met such a person, honestly, now that I'm thinking about it.
It cannot
you don't hear about that
don't
person.
hear about it. Except for somebody who's probably all throughout his life was not fully sincere in what he was doing, and he was forced by the circumstances to become a religious person. There could be some people like that. You know, you're accidentally born into an extremely religious family, and you got no choice.
Right.
And at the end of your journey, you tell yourself, and you blame others for making your life difficult unnecessarily, because the person was not interested, he was not convinced, and therefore he didn't, what we call, believe properly.
But that's the individual's journey.
That's
and
right.
They will be judged.
So you're all going to be judged on the basis of how sincere you are. And sincerity is something that has got to do with the puzzle. The puzzle is there to seek your attention. And the more you get answers, the more you are naturally drawn into it to seek more. And then you are moving in the right direction, and you are feeling that, you know what, you're getting it. And this gives you a feeling of confidence, contentment, and that's what the purpose is of solving this puzzle.
I'm glad you brought it back to the puzzle, because I want to talk more about this puzzle. A puzzle has pieces, right?
Right.
I want to know what these pieces are, in your opinion, but let's start with the largest piece. So what is the biggest piece of the puzzle?
I think different people would answer it differently. If you ask me, honestly, the biggest piece of the puzzle is death and beyond. I mean, life is brilliant. I want to make the best out of it. But why does it come to a closure, a halt, all of a sudden? I mean, this happens, when you lose somebody very close to you all of a sudden. And I think that's what prompts many people to turn towards religion. It was my reason to turn towards religion when I lost my father. I mean, why did it happen? Because that is a very serious problem in the puzzle. But others might say that, we want to know about a God, our creator. Why did he create us? People like me would turn towards God later when they will find an answer to this question, because that's the immediate question that bothers them. And then in getting the answer on a bigger, wider scale, its aspect of its design, we'll obviously turn to God and know about him more and more.
That is very interesting, actually. I think death is a very interesting topic, especially when you're talking about God and religion and a puzzle.
That's true. It is indeed. That makes our life really puzzling.
It's one of the largest motivators
It is.
for human action,
Yeah.
directly or indirectly.
Absolutely.
Wow. So I'd love to talk about the other pieces, but we have run out of time for this episode. So on the next episode, we'll start to delve into that.
Oh, that's great. So I hope you enjoyed the discussion on the puzzle of life and the Quran. We'll continue with it in the next episode, and I would like all of you to join us then. Assalamu alaikum.